Hello, friends, subscribers, visitors. Welcome to the Evangelist Garrett channel. You're joining us on day 5 of creation. We're doing a series where we talk about each individual day of the creation, not just from the book of Genesis, but how it reads to us in all the different languages. And we have found some amazing things. So thank you for joining us. If you haven't seen the first 4, you can check them out here. As always, we're going to start by reading the day we're talking about just in straight English. It's Genesis chapter 1, beginning with verse 20. And God said, "Let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that hath life, and fowl that may fly above the earth, in the open firmament of heaven. And God created great whales and every living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, Be fruitful, and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let fowl multiply in the earth. And the evening and the morning were the 5th day." The 5th day is very interesting. Let me just briefly recap what's happened so far. On day 1, God's Spirit was hovering over some solid matter that was in pure darkness, and God created a revelatory light, separated it from that darkness. On day 2, there's talk of a firmament and separating it from above and below, and waters, right? On the 3rd day, we get more description of these firmaments and separations of waters above and below into distinct bodies. We also hear that on the land, grass grew, herb life, fruit trees by seeds, all after its kind. On the 4th day, God creates heavenly bodies with the specific purpose of guiding humankind in seasons and signs and months and years. And now here we are on the 5th day, and we're talking still about the water and the sky mostly, and we're beginning to talk about creatures. Verse 20, and God said, "Let the waters bring forth abundantly." If you haven't yet, you've got to go check out the prequel I made to Whole Bible Explained Like a Boss, where I went over ancient Akkadian, Mesopotamian, Babylonian, Egyptian, their mythology and creation stories, because it centers so much on water. And there are certain ideas about water and creatures being created in water that certainly would open the perspective when reading this account from Genesis. Let's look at some languages here. In the Hebrew, we'd have something specifically like living of creatures with an abundance. The waters, let abound. How do we know this? Because the word for creation, a verb, bara, only God can bara in the way it's used in the book of Genesis. It's profound theologically because God is always the subject when bara is used in this way. In Spanish, we hear Produzcan, or to produce, producing. God produces. He brought forth abundantly. In the Latin, we have an interesting thing that happens. Let me read the whole thing, and I don't speak Latin professionally, so I'm going to butcher it. But Deus producant, there's produce again. Deus, God produces, aquae reptile animae. Animals of the water, right? Aqua, reptile, form of animal. Obviously, it's not very scientific, but interesting. Viventis et volatile, volatile, abundant, vibrant, super again. Every day of the Latin tells us supernatural, vibrant, volatile is happening. The Latin really gives us a lot as far as base descriptor words. So the moving creature that hath life, only water creatures, because no reference has really been made to land yet beyond what we said. God hasn't ordained it to much of a purpose yet other than what he's created on it. We get the fowl that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven. In the Hebrew, literally, of the sky, of the firmament, the face across the earth above, that's where they're flying. And God creates great whales. Now here's where it gets exciting for me. I could not get over this. Why is it that the only animal God names specifically here is the whale? I think there's a couple reasons, but it's fascinating. First off, let's look over at the Greek for a second. We have the Septuagint, which is a Greek translation of the Hebrew Old Testament. We have ketos or ketos, which is a large fish or sea monster. It's the only animal named, and certainly the basic answer, it's designed to convey God's power and majesty in bara, creation, that God builds the biggest and most awesome of everything. But interestingly, a mammal is chosen to highlight. A mammal gives life by live birth. The basic science book generally identifies 5 types of animals with backbones: mammals, fish, some reptiles, birds, and amphibians. I think it's interesting that in evolution, animals allegedly came from the primordial ooze to the deep sea single-celled organisms. Some of them eventually came out of the water and onto land, and for millions of years, I guess they lived in both and eventually lived in the trees, right? There's that forward idea, but God doesn't name an amphibian here, which would be easy to do. You're talking about water, but he doesn't. God names an animal that is the same today as it was at the beginning and that gives birth to live young. It is just so crazy when you think about all the arguing about apologetics and different philosophies that occur. And from the very start, the wording is so specific that it supports the supernatural nature of the text. In Spanish, it tells us it's a grandes monstruos marinos, a great sea monster or a big, and every living creature that moveth is what God says, but only names the whale. The waters brought them forth abundantly, right? And the winged fowl after their kind. And then it tells us God saw that it was good. All these things that God's describing as good, I like to go back to that first and second day and say, okay, what was there? What we determined is we don't know if it's talking about creation ex nihilo at the very beginning, creation from nothing at the very beginning, or it seems to be alluding to the idea that there was a creation and then a destruction and a recreation. In Spanish, we had pestaba, the past was, and it uses in verse 2, tohu vabohu, which is used in other parts of the Bible to convey destruction and recreation in the same way we see. So, looking at it there, and it was good, it was good, it was good. It's essentially God's creative power is so abundant and vibrant and rapid that its force and essence itself is good. The systems, both physical matter and spiritual. Now, there's one more thing I want to go over, and this doesn't deal specifically with day 5, but it deals with answering this question. What is the Christian doctrine of the creation? Because as we see, there's so many different ideas gleaned out of creation. Is there one universal doctrine on creation? There actually is, and it is shared by most denominations. It's different in Protestant and confessional. They have one. Catholic and Orthodox and creedal faiths tend to emphasize another point with the same words. It largely becomes rhetorical, but I'll tell you what the doctrine is. That God alone is eternal in the creation. God alone is eternal. The systems of the material universe and matter, including both physical and spiritual worlds, have a beginning, except God. God absolutely created initially out of nothing by the power of his own almighty will. That is reality. He created, though, by his word voice. It's interpreted different ways. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. The Word is Jesus Christ. It can be interpreted that way. Or it can be interpreted that God literally used sound to create. It can be defined as communication, that handing down communication to humankind was the key, or that God said, Gott sprach, what we see repeated in the German language, is the power, the force itself, vibrations, right? Both interpretations have taken root. Notice this doctrinal definition does allow for oneness and Trinitarian view of Christianity when it says God alone is eternal. God alone is eternal. God is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Or God alone in the creedal view, right? I believe in God the Father Almighty, the maker of heaven and earth. God the Father is not God the Son or God the Holy Spirit, right? But the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are God in the Trinitarian view. So it's a little known secret that both oneness and Trinitarian Christianity can be accommodated by the doctrinal definition of creation in any non-creedal form of Christianity. In the creedal form, the Father is preeminent and solely responsible for creation. But that's a contradiction, isn't it? How do we have that view and not admit to holding the same adoptionist type views as Arius in the 4th century that led to the First Council of Nicaea? That's essentially Arius's view. God the Father alone is eternal and created. God was some form of special creation. Christ is not co-eternal or co-equal. Can't you glean that from that creedal view? Well, no, and here's how. Because Jesus Christ is the Word. Good. We got Jesus in there somewhere, right? So that's the difference there. It creates a bit of a contradiction. Is Jesus Christ present as a member of the Trinity in the beginning? Or is God the Son present only as the Word in the beginning? So as you can see, it all becomes a rhetorical exercise. That's what it is. Every denomination has this same doctrinal text as its core, but they define it slightly differently depending on what it is, but it accommodates both oneness and Trinitarian belief. Anyway, there's a lot of interesting links between these days of creation. Please, again, check out the first part of the series. Also, check out that prequel that talks about the mythologies of the ancient world. It'll help this to even make more sense. And I will see you next time when we talk about day 6. If you want to, you can purchase one of the books I've written on Amazon.com/author/Nicholas Garrett. You can get a book from the Just Tell Me the Truth About Christianity series. I've recently finished up The Reformation and Counter-Reformation, which will be the 4th volume in that series. The books are inexpensive. You can get them for paperback or for your Kindle. You can also purchase my nonfiction work, Shipwrecked in the Land of King Tobacco, the first Washington family immigrant to America. It's about John Washington, George Washington's great-grandfather, the first immigrant to our country, and his very interesting and fascinating life. You can also check out the Teespring store. I've been revamping it, and I will be over the next week to put a lot of cool stuff in there that could be bought for gifts for the holidays. Look forward to many more videos coming up, and thank you. If you are enjoying what we're doing here, go ahead and subscribe and click on all notifications so that you see the videos we make and you can decide whether or not you want to watch them. I enjoy being with you. God bless you, and as always, may your work today bear fruit. Thanks.